All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this workshop on core values. And we're going to do kind of a quick round of introductions first, I think, and then because we are going to do some interactive things over the course of the hour. So it would be good to kind of get to know everybody. So my name is Yoji Shimizu. I'm, I guess in my day job, I'm a professor and an associate dean at the University of Minnesota. And first, I've been a parent, volunteer, a mentor. Currently, I'm doing a lot of master of ceremonies work at First Regionals. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Morgan. I'm a member of Team 1816, The Green Machine. We're out of Edina, Minnesota. I've been on our team for 2 years now, and I am currently the assistant captain of the team.
And I'm Simone Valancourt. I am also, or this is actually my second year on the team as well, and I'm the business lead. And then, yeah.
Here they are.
We have two other
A
people.
dramatic entrance. Quick introductions.
Hi, I'm Tenzing.
Hi, I'm Harini.
And then could we maybe quickly go through the room and just kind of introduce yourselves and what teams you're with? We can start over here.
Sure. My name is Matt. I'm the lead mentor for Team 199 in California.
Good.
I'm from Team 51 from Eastern Washington, Richland.
Team 2073 from Sacramento, California.
Cool.
I'm Morgan's mom. And I'm Simone's mom. We're with 1816, obviously.
Pass the mic back down.
I'm John, Team 996 from Casa Grande, Arizona.
I'm Tibor, 2854.
I'm Robin, 2854. I'm Santosh from 2854. I'm the secretary of the team.
I'm Smile from 2854. I'm the treasurer from the team.
I'm Rishi from 2854. I'm the president of the team.
Doug, 2854, mentor.
Cool.
Gary, 6171, Dallas, coach.
Oh, hi. Sorry, just came in, but Jim Puglia from Bedminster. We're just spectators here today.
Hi, Ted, also from New Jersey.
Good.
Shakti from Washington, just a spectator.
Richard from 2854, former president.
Good. All right. Thank you
I'm
very
from
much.
Knoxville, Tennessee, with Team 3140.
Good. Great. Thanks. So it's good to have you all here. What we are going to do today is maybe go through a process that we went through together as a team, talking about how to develop a set of guiding principles, or what we would call core values. And I'm sure with First, you've probably heard about core values through things like First Lego League, but in our sense here, we're really talking about kind of core values that define teams or organizations. And if you look online or look at major corporations and organizations, they all have a set of core values, which are really kind of a set of principles or standards of behavior for a person or an organization. So these are really kind of guiding principles that really dictate behavior, that help individuals within that organization distinguish between right and wrong, and essentially help you determine if you and your team are on the right path. And why are these important? Well, I think in general, if you know what your values are, when hard decisions come along, it's a lot easier to be able to make those decisions, right? And in First, there are a number of situations that come up that require some really hard decisions. And examples of those include a number of these kinds of things, both internally within your team, but also at competitions, like a team member that fails to continually meet his or her obligations during build season, or things at a competitive event, like blowing a match to affect the ranking points for an alliance member or opposition member, intentionally trying to damage another robot during a match, or persistent arguing with the head ref in a finals match even after a decision has been made, inappropriate talk or action from one team member to another, changes in alliance strategy that had previously been agreed upon, modifying a robot beyond legal rules, not telling inspectors about it. We'd like to think that those kinds of things don't happen, but they do, even in a program like First. And this is where having sort of a set of core values can be really very important. And we know about a core value within First. This is really gracious professionalism. This is, as Woody Flower says, gracious professionalism is part of the ethos of First, and it's a way of doing things that encourages high-quality work, emphasizes the value of others, and respects individuals and the community. So this is a fundamental core value for the entire organization. But what's interesting about this quote is it says, gracious professionalism is part of the ethos of FIRST. So it's not the only kind of core value I think that Woody would like teams to have. So when we think about this, I think we really think about gracious professionalism as kind of the foundation for kind of the core values for every FIRST team. But then every team, I think, would benefit from having a discussion about what are the other core values that build upon gracious professionalism so that you can achieve your team mission and realize your team's vision moving forward. So that's what this kind of, that's what we really want to talk about today, actually, is we would like to kind of take you through an interactive exercise that we used at our team retreat last fall to help begin to understand how we went through this process of developing core values. So we can't do the whole thing. The overall process actually took about, 3 or 4 months, I think, total. But we can take you through at least the initial part of what we did at the team retreat. So what we really need to do in order to make this work, and this is not the ideal room in which to do this, is to break up into kind of smaller groups. And since we have one team here, it's great for you to stay together as a small group because you can begin this process now if you'd like. And then to have the other mentors and coaches that are here to maybe break up into groups of about 4 or 5. That's really ideal for this kind of exercise. And each of you are going to get a small pad of Post-it notes, right, and a pen. You want to start distributing those now. And you'll need a marker or a pen if you have one. And then we are going to use the walls essentially as a board. So if you break up into groups, we'd ask your groups, like one group over here use this wall over here, and maybe a couple of other groups use those walls over on the other side. So there's some space for you to put the big Post-it notes. All right? So everybody got one? All right, so for like the next 10 minutes or so, what we're going to do is for each, you'll use a lot of these Post-it notes, all right? And what we're going to ask you to do is basically write down behaviors or characteristics that you admire in a person, like a team member or a mentor or a best friend, or in an organization, right? And this could be as many behaviors or characteristics as you can think of. We're talking about things like loyalty or trust or respect, those kinds of characteristics. And you use one Post-it note for each characteristic or behavior. So you're going to end up with a lot of Post-it notes. And we're going to ask you basically to put all those up on the wall. And as you as a small group put those behaviors and characteristics together, you'll find out whether you've got similar behaviors or characteristics. We're not trying to remove any of them. We're just trying to, at this point, list all of them. That, for example, that you would do with your team. So, so one behavior characteristic per Post-it note is essentially what you want to do. And you can, over the course of 5 or 10 minutes, list as many as you want. And again, we're really talking about characteristics or behaviors that you admire, either in person or in an organization or team. Right? So I'm going to ask you guys, if you're in like a group of 5, use that wall over there. Just kind of stand up, yeah. This is for moving around. You guys maybe over in that corner. again, your top five. Nope, just what you put together. So this is, if you were a team, what are your personal top five? Got it. Yeah, that's okay. But you need to pick five. You yourself need to pick five. When you're done, we'll just do a very brief kind of readout of each group. All right. Are we good? Are we done? Okay, good. So let's just quickly go through each group, and maybe you can just tell us what your top, which of the values have the highest number of values?
It looks like we have creative. It looks to be our number one. Kind of split between, I don't know what you call that. We have one category where the words supportive, encouraging, kind, and respect all fall under. And then we have yet to determined, and then the next one would be listens, or coachable, or humble. They all kind of fell into the same category for us.
Okay, good. All right, how about you guys? Just list off the ones that have some dots on them.
It seems the tops are respectful, listening, hardworking. Those are our tops. And then it's a tie also between calm and cooperative.
All right, 2054, right?
Yeah. All right, so similar to other teams, we got similar answers. So responsible had the most, and then behind it, trustworthy and understanding and hardworking all had quite a few. We also had cooperative and dedication.
Okay, so our team, the first one is respectful, and then integrity, and then followed by perseverance, compassion, and responsibility. So those are our top five.
Thank you. All right, fantastic. You all did a great job. So essentially, what you have done is gone through that first process of identifying the team's core values. So the way in which that we did this is an entire team retreat, every person on the team. We'll talk a little bit about the role of mentors in a minute, but the entire team, every individual team member went through this process. We generated a huge list of values. And just for the sake of time, we weren't able to kind of do it in the way that we did it at the retreat. We actually took all those values and we kind of spent a dinner break kind of listing all of them and making sure that we had them all listed. And then we gave them a big sheet of Post-it papers with all of those values, and again, asked each team member with these dots to identify their top five. which then narrows down that list and gives you a shorter list of values. I think in our case, it ended up with like 10 or 20 of these words and values that we used. And they're very similar to the ones that you kind of came up with here today. So that ended the first phase of this process for us, which is basically coming up with a list of kind of 10 or 20 different kind of core values that the entire team agreed were the essential core values. So after this dot exercise, everybody looked at that list, and we had another discussion about, did we miss anything? Was there a value that we missed? Are those the right ones that we really thought were the important ones, to have another group discussion about whether that in fact was the core list that the team wanted to work with. And so the next step, at least for in this process, was we did another exercise the next day at an all-team meeting, an exercise that we call Why These Values? And this involved, again, kind of small group work with the entire team, in which we took those 10 or 20 short list of values and we mapped them and basically asked team members to list why those values were chosen, right? And then to take each of those selected values and put them under this why statement in small groups, right? So this was kind of the way this was done. Each of those values was in one of these little short strips of paper, and then each small group came up with descriptions of why this particular value was chosen and why it would go under this particular kind of subgroup. So to give you an idea, this is a little abstract kind of go through, but this is an example of the kinds of things that the team came up with. Like, we chose these values because we want to have a strong and cohesive team. We chose these values because we want to work with people who have these values, which we perceive as people who are successful or leaders or role models. We chose these values because it improves our communication, or it allows us to problem solve and resolve conflicts more easily, those kinds of things. So it gives a framework for the team moving forward to figure out, why are these values so important, and what will they potentially do for the team moving forward. Right. Then, the next step was probably the most difficult part, which was really to kind of finalize those values and draft statements for each of those core values. And I think depending on the size of your team, this could involve the entire team, or it can involve a smaller subgroup of team members. And in the case of 1816, it involved a subcommittee that was formed by team leadership. And they'll talk to you a little bit about how they formed that subcommittee. But that subcommittee then met to basically group some of those core values and then come up with the definitive kind of core value. And the end point here was really to come up with 4 or 5 kind of core values that would be the core values for this team. So in this particular example, this subcommittee grouped dependable, reliable, respectful, accountable, and trust all together. And they decided to choose trust as kind of the core value that they were going to use moving forward. And underneath that would be dependable, reliable, respectful, and accountable. And then they developed basically a value statement for why trust is their core value. And so we went through iterations of this, and basically one student member of this values committee came up with the first draft, which was basically, we believe that our team collaborates most effectively with a foundation built on trust. We follow through on commitments, encourage open and honest communication, are credible and reliable, and act with candor and accountability. So that was the first draft, and then the values committee went forward and edited it as a group, and the final statement ended up being, our team works at its best with relationships built on trust. We live up to our responsibilities by being credible, reliable, and accountable. We create a safe environment that enables open and honest communication. So slight revisions to kind of the scope and what the team was trying to get at with this particular core value of trust. So they did that with each of the core values. I think you ended up with 5 core values, which they'll talk about in a minute. But this is the overall process by which the team went through this to define their core values. And then finally, once those value statements were developed, then this was presented to the entire team for discussion and ultimately for essentially a vote and approval of those statements as core values. All right. So before I turn it over to these guys to tell you about the team-specific process, there are a couple of other things that came out of this exercise that I think were important for us. So one was having a third-party facilitator can be quite useful because a third-party facilitator can have an outside perspective that hopefully will not influence the way in which the team thinks about these particular core values. So I know many people in the corporate world have gone through these kinds of strategic planning exercises. There are coaches that do this on a regular basis. So if there's someone who's familiar with this process, it might be worth considering having that person come in to help the team kind of work through this process. The other major question was, what should the role of mentors be in this exercise, and mentors and coaches? So you could have the mentors and coaches be involved in the entire process as we did today, or not have them be involved at all in developing the core values. I think these guys took a different approach, which is they had the mentors do this exact same exercise completely separately from the team. So that at the team retreat, the team did this thing, the mentors did the exact same thing, and at the end of the evening, they compared their list of values. And the subcommittee actually had to reconcile the values developed by the mentors and differences there with the values that were developed by the team. And so that's another thing that could potentially be used. And the other thing is maybe what if the team kind of gets stuck? You know, there might be some core values that you think are important, but you just haven't thought about. So there are actually, we have some handouts where actually you just have lists of 500 values. And sometimes if the team gets stuck, you can just kind of use that as a prompt to get the team to consider, okay, have we thought about everything? That's one way in which we can do that. We'll hold those till the end, I think. So, but that's another way to kind of prompt your thinking about why these values are important and what values they are. Okay, so you guys want to take it away in terms of what you did and kind of what the impact has been overall?
Right, so us four were all involved in the values committee at some point or another. So as Yoji kind of alluded to earlier, these values have had a definite impact on our team because they guide a lot of what we're doing in our team, because we decide if we want to do something, it has to fit in with our mission, vision, and our core values. So, is that better? Thank you. So, and then we also know that they're going to be reflective of who we are as a team, because during the initial process, which we've kind of mirrored here today, every single member of our team was involved in that process, so we know that these values truly are reflective of who we are. And then, yeah, they guide decision-making, so big picture decisions regarding our team and what we want to do as a team, but they also guide our everyday behaviors and how we act, not just here at competition, but also around each other and also when we're outside doing outreach events. And then they're also a foundation to they're also a pathway towards gracious professionalism, because gracious professionalism, as Yoji also said earlier, is the foundation of what we do in FIRST, but it's not everything, so they definitely help us work towards it. And then finally, they are energizing us as a team and unify us and really help dictate who we are and what we do. Morgan, you want to add something?
Yeah, sorry. I think it's important to set the groundwork as to why core values were important to us and like why this year it was something that we established. So in 2013, before any of us were on the team, prior members of the team established something called Be First. So it was an initiative that our team started. And basically what this initiative was is we gave an award at competition to the team that we thought resembled the most gracious professionalism. It was kind of like our version of the Gracious Professionalism Award. So ethics has been, yes, sorry.
Sure.
Okay. So where did you do that at, and how did you do the award, and did you get the region or the competition to acknowledge, or did you just go around and?
So this is, yeah, I understand what you're saying. So this is how it worked. It was members of our team went around to different teams, and we just picked one team that we thought resembled the values of FIRST, and we gave them an award. I'm not sure if that was some kind of certificate or what it was, but it was something, like some kind of award. And what happened is then at another competition, that team would then pass on the award to another team. So it was like, so, yeah, right.
But did you get any flack from who was running the competition?
No, it was, no. Right, they have a Gracious Professionalism Award, yeah. Yeah.
Well, to clarify, the Gracious Professionalism Award is specifically about gracious professionalism, but what our award is more than just gracious professionalism, is who is exemplifying the values of FIRST. So that also includes cooperation, that also includes their behavior in and out of the event. And then, and then the other thing we didn't receive any flack from FIRST, but the award wasn't adopted by FIRST, as in, like, FIRST
Yeah,
Robotics didn't give it
it
out.
was a kind of a peer-to-peer,
Exactly.
award, essentially. Yeah.
Right. And that award is, I mean, I think we kind of lost track of it, but it's actually still being passed around a competition, because a team back in Minnesota, I saw gave that to a different team, and I saw it on their Twitter. And so it's something that's still being passed around, because teams attend different regional competitions, so we kind of lost track of the award, but 5 years later, it's still being passed around, so that was exciting to see. So my point is that for a long time, ethics has been something that our team has thought about, but that was specifically towards FIRST, people embodying the values of FIRST, and the values that we ended up choosing are ones that we've seen within our team for years. They just have never been established. So when we did this whole entire process and implemented these values and we're holding each other accountable to them, we've really seen the impact that defining these values has had on our team. So, yeah, that's why I wanted to establish that.
And then the other thing that Morgan, I think, was about to mention as well was we wanted to really formalize them this year, because we had a lot of seniors who graduated last year, over half our team, and we had a lot of new rookies this year, so currently over half our team is rookies. So we wanted to make sure that going into this year that, everyone knew what it meant to be a part of the Green Machine, because there's less of the whole seniors are teaching the rookies, because we just didn't have any. So by holding our core values exercise at the beginning of the year, every single rookie on our team really got to know what it meant to be a part of the Green Machine, like the team culture, the team history, and our core values.
So do you want to go to the next slide, which is kind of focused on actually how do you actually live these values? Like, once you establish them, how do you make sure that a team actually abides by them?
Absolutely. So one thing that we did, which I don't have my name tag, but we put a sticker with our core values on the back of our name tags, so that every student is able to see it and make sure they're being represented at all times. We also make sure that we hold each other accountable. So if somebody isn't being respectful to somebody else, we'll call them out on that. And it's just very important to make sure that everybody knows that you should be representing these core values at all times. Hey, there you go.
Will you go back just for 1 second? Yeah, so another big thing for us with the core values was, again, just establishing the culture of our core values within our team. Like Morgan and Harini were talking about earlier, it's because we had such a large graduating class, we really wanted to make sure that we could create something that could be passed down, just so that every year it's not, students having to wonder, what is it to be the Green Machine? We've set that precedent, so now everyone knows what to expect, and everyone's living by the same values, which is really important to us.
One other quick thing to say is that when we were talking about the process earlier, after the committee had finalized the different values, we went back to a team meeting and we had team buy-in, essentially, of these values, because we wanted the team to approve them. And that's extremely important, because you can't create a bunch of values that nobody on your team is going to live by. So team buy-in is extremely important.
Right, and going off of that, that's why if you're conducting a similar exercise with your own teams, you want to make sure that you have a lot of people involved initially, because you don't want to have a set of values that are reflective of 4 people on your team. So yeah, and then actually going back to the slide now. So we have ours on the back of our name tags, but you can choose to implement them however you want to, as long as you're implementing them in a way that you're reminded of them consistently. So we had some other ideas on that slide, or on that side. Yeah, on that side of the slide. So yeah, pit banners, posters, and just like recognition, as in, recognizing who's exemplifying your team's core values the most. And then also other forms of swag or codes of conduct. Yes. swag.
I think some teams actually have specific codes of conduct, which may be related to kind of this core values exercise. And I think I'm not sure with you guys kind of why you did or didn't want to go in that direction, but I think you guys felt that defining the core values was sufficient in terms of getting the group buy-in, rather than having a defined kind of code of conduct, right?
Code of conduct. For us, we have a code of conduct, except our code of conduct is more specific instances and specific behaviors, but it's not as general as our core values. So our core values are more guiding principles which you choose to live by, whereas our code of conduct is, for example, at competitions you can't be wandering alone, or something like that. So it's a very specific instance and it's a very specific behavior. And we realized that our core values and our code of conduct didn't mesh well in the same instances, and they weren't the same type of guiding idea.
Okay, good. All right, hold on. All right, so I think these are kind of the kind of really important questions that maybe you guys can talk about. Let's sort of like, how do you actually, when you feel that a team member or your team is kind of straying from the core values, how do you actually kind of hold each other accountable to those issues? How do you do that, actually?
All right. Well, I have a specific story prior to me being on the team, but one of our graduates, a guy, I could say his name, but you wouldn't know him. We work with people in homeless shelters in downtown Minneapolis because we're a suburb of Minneapolis, and so we bring Legos to these kids in these homeless transitional housing shelters. And so we were there for about a week, and one of the guys on our team saw this girl kind of sitting in the corner, and she was also in a wheelchair, and she didn't feel like she could participate in the activities that we were doing with these kids. And this guy is pretty shy, so he didn't really want to approach her, kind of stayed to himself and was working with the kids over here. And he did that for about 2 days. And what happened is finally on the third day, he got up the courage to go over to her and asked her if she wanted to hands-on participate in what all the other kids were working on. And she was pretty hesitant at first as well, but he ended up convincing her to come over and start working on it. And she got so excited working with these Lego Mindstorm robots, and ended up being like the one kid there that was like extremely, extremely passionate about working with robots, and you would never have expected because all she was doing was sitting in the corner. And then the kid talked to the education director at the facility and said that, and that education director told him that this girl was going to be an engineer because this was something that she was so excited about, and she thought that there was a barrier between her and working with these robots when really all she needed was somebody to invite her and join her in. So some of our core values, and this was a scenario where all of our core values were shown in just one scenario, and they weren't even defined at the time. So one of our core values are respect, and me hearing the story, I gained a lot of respect for this kid, or this prior team member on our team who now comes back and mentors. The second one is trust. Trent is the kid. I haven't established his name yet, but Trent gained the trust of this girl who was just sitting in the corner. Inclusivity. He included her when she wasn't being included. Commitment. He was committed to making sure that this girl participated in this activity, even though she was in the corner. And when he invited her at first, she was like, no, I'm fine here. But he was committed to making sure that she got this experience, and she ended up getting a lot out of it. And the last one is joy of life. This girl had so much joy of life coming in and working on this robot, something that she wasn't experiencing sitting in the corner. So those are the 5 values that we have, and that was a scenario of all 5 of those values being shown when they weren't defined. So I think that that's something that's been really impactful, seeing that before they were even defined on our team. And now that we've defined them, I'll pass it off to them how we hold each other accountable to it.
Okay, so I actually have another story. At my first off-season competition, I didn't really know how things were run, so I ran through the pits to go tell someone something, and a older member of the team actually pulled me aside and said, "Hey, stop! Don't run in the pits. Other teams may do it, but that's just not who we are." And I think that was really, really cool to see because he's only a year older than I am, but he already knows how the team works and how everything is run. And I think it was super helpful because now I know not to run in the pits, but it was also like I learned that there are things you can and can't do at competitions, and you have to have respect for the environment and stuff like that.
Well, going off of Tenzing's story, then that's kind of an example of how we hold each other accountable to our core values. So when we see like our teammates that, or an instance where they're not living by our core values, then we point it out. And, a lot of the times it's okay. It's not a repeated pattern of behavior for them. But when it is, it's, a discussion that has to be had for us about how you're not living by your core values and how you can then, moving forward, what you can do so that you are actually living by them. But in general, for our team, as I think we've mentioned a couple times before, and as Morgan also alluded to, there was definitely team buy-in, and everyone was involved in that. So it's not like these are core values that people don't believe in, because they do. So because of that, and because we're instilling a culture of these values within our team, it's a lot easier for, the discussion isn't a serious, repeated pattern of behavior because people believe in the core values.
Good, thank you. Simone, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think,
Okay,
I think I'm
all
good.
right. Good. Questions or discussion at this point? We have a few minutes left. Yeah.
Do you ever foresee regional process? Do you think that you're always going to be able to transfer the values to new members as your old members graduate, or will there be time when perhaps new members have not bought into it and you need to review it?
Well, personally, just from what I've seen this year, the rookies have really bought into the process, partly because they were at our team retreat, like Tenzing can talk about that, he was there, and it was part of that all-team buy-in. So I think just having our team retreat and being able to continually live by those values and introduce those values to new team members, I think that's really going to help. Since this is the first year we've had them, we can't really predict how often we're going to have to reintroduce the values, but I would say that the team retreat is going to play a big role in that.
If there comes a point in time where the values are no longer reflective of who we are as a team, or maybe there are other values that we have that we value more, then that would be a time to change it, because the values are meant to reflect who we are as a team. So if that changes, then the values change, because your values and your mission and your vision evolve with your team's identity, and teams change over time. I mean, within our own team, when we first started, our goals were definitely not the same as they are now. And so we've changed our mission and our vision to reflect that, and core values are treated similarly.
Does that play a part in being on the team? Do you apply to your teams, or is it just saying anybody can be on the team, which there's all kinds of teams, so you're not making any assessments on either of those. So when you're signing up to be on the green team,
Oh, okay.
do you know going in
I-
that is part of who we are?
So we just created them this year, so I didn't know that this was going to happen. But in the future, we will let prior member or incoming members know that this is something that has to they have to adapt to. I don't know. At our team retreat,
Yeah.
adopt. Thank you. So I don't think it's anybody who has prior first experience can be on our team, but this is definitely something we expect every team member to embody on our team.
I think it's fair to say, you guys maybe won't be as willing to say this, but I think it's fair to say that actually not every team member bought into these core values actually when they were done. And I think we had at least one team member who left the team. And I think it really was because he didn't buy into these values. So
I think that ideally it's something that we'd want in our, yes. Right, and I think that what we're trying to do right now, because it's a process, it's hard to get buy-in. Like, we've been doing this at both the regionals that we've attended, and there's a lot of people that are like, like, this is baloney, like, why are you guys doing this? This isn't important. And then there's a lot of people that are like, this is great, like, this is something that is super important to our team as well, we should do this. And so I think that right now we're focusing on trying to help FRC teams, and then it's a process. So I think that ideally, yes, we'd like to implement it into all levels of first.
I mean, another reason that we're focusing a little bit more on FRC teams at the moment is because a lot of it is the fact that within FRC and within FTC there are some differences, and so it's a little bit easier, like the focus of, with keeping the focus of FRC in mind and the fact that there is a greater emphasis placed on, you know, doing a lot more than just what you do within the 6 weeks of build season. It's a lot easier to implement or to share our process with those people because they are kind of able to see where we're coming from, but like Morgan said.
I have something to add on. And also, you see a lot of FRC teams being mentors for these younger teams in lots of different districts. So I think that once it's implemented in FRC, then those teams can then bring it to their younger teams.
We have a number of mentor roundtables in the state of Minnesota. There's also a mentor training session that happens off-season, and actually we've brought this topic up to those mentors and coaches as well to try and encourage them to think about how they might think about incorporating this kind of exercise into their teams.
A couple things. One, have you guys, it sounds like you guys haven't got to this point, but I guess spark of thought. Have you put any sort of reflective process to kind of look back and see if your routine has changed and in that you need to adjust your values? Or is that something that you're still kind of like, that's maybe a couple years past or a couple of years in the future? Like, I mean, have you started thinking about, like, do these values really match up with what we wanted to get accomplished this year?
I mean, in regards to your first part about whether or not the team has changed, I think definitely we have changed a lot. Just because 2 years ago when I was my rookie year on the Green Machine, after a couple of our competitions, we hadn't qualified for championships, and ultimately we didn't qualify that year. But the mentality after not qualifying, and we qualified for state as well, but after not making it to champs and not having as successful of a robot or like or as a season as we wanted to, like during that season, the mentality we had going into our next event wasn't great. So like there was a group of people that were really committed and wanted to make sure that we were always improving the robot and striving towards that next step. But as a whole, that wasn't reflective of who we were as a team. Once we suffered a loss, you know, there was definitely kind of a downer mentality about it. And this year after our first regional, we won the Entrepreneurship Award, but we hadn't qualified for championships. And the mentality in between our first regional and our second regional was unlike anything I have ever seen before within our team, because we were so much more energized and we were willing to put in the commitment and invest the time that we needed to make that happen for ourselves. So it wasn't just we had 5 people that were really committed, it was every single member of our team that was showing up, wanting to make a difference. So I think absolutely we've changed a lot.
Yeah, his question. Yeah. I remember your question. So you were talking about the reflective process, if there's something that we'll do towards the end of the year to reflect on it to see if we've changed. And I actually hadn't thought about that. So, I mean, personally, I haven't, but I think that is a good.
Well, my second statement is
the second statement.
follow up on that, because I definitely think I'm going to be in contact with you guys because I would love to know what your retreat date looks like.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't think this isn't the only thing you guys.
No, that's correct. But we always have some kind of team building exercise in the retreat. This was what we did this year. Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Pick your brains about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you send an outline to the email list?
Yeah. We'll have to figure out how we can do this through.
Yeah, we have business cards
first, but-
too, so if you guys
Yeah.
want to contact us.
Yeah.
That sounds like something I'm very interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reflective process is a really important question, actually. It's something that we haven't really thought about, I think, moving forward. So I think that's definitely something that we need to do and think about how to reflect on what's happened. And yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. So let me just, first, let me just thank this woman, Lisa Gordon. She's actually the executive planning coach that I worked with in my job. We did this entire exercise actually as part of my work at the University of Minnesota, and thought it could be transferable to high school students. And this is our contact information. So if you are, we're happy to work with you, any of you, to talk about this process and work on this. I will say just in closing, this is my own personal observation with this particular team, is the one core value that I think really transformed this team was joy of life. That was a core value that they spent a lot of time thinking about. Like, was that the right term? Should it be fun? What should it be? But I think that really had a transformative impact on the team in terms of, just making it, I think, and that's why they responded so positively to sort of some of the perceived setbacks from that first regional event, is having that, being reminded about the importance of that particular core value, I think, was really important. And they did spend a lot of time reflecting on the importance of that and whether that should be one of their core values. Other questions or comments at this point? All right, thank you very much. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you.